Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 114. You are listening to Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's What's on Your Mind, and I'm here with Elise Seifert. It's John Webster.
Hey, John.
I sent you a social media post I found on Future Earth, and it was exactly the right thing for me to see on exactly the right day where I was feeling down in the dumps. And this is Future Earth, I'm assuming is an environmental type site where they try and encourage protecting the planet and that kind of stuff. Here's the quote. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. Choose joy over despair, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift. That was great to hear.
I think that's a beautiful quote. Sometimes we forget how amazing it is that we're alive.
I totally agree.
The number of miracles that had to have occurred for us to be where we are, to be living on a planet that can function as well as Earth can, and that gives us everything we need. I know I saw a quote recently as well about how we take every day for granted. We don't really recognize the miracles in our everyday life. And that really kind of shifted my mindset to see more of those miracles every day, and just plants growing and animals living and the world just reproducing. It's all a miracle that we just really take for granted.
I wrote down a quote from Ricky Gervais, who I like. And we actually talked about this on episode 9. So I went back and grabbed it because I thought something would come up along the lines that I was thinking what you were thinking. I'll read it all out except for one bad word, which I'll fill in. But he says... It
is Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, Ricky Gervais. We're on a rock, traveling around one of 100 billion stars. Our species is one of over 500 million that have ever existed. Our chances of being born are about 1 in 400 trillion. You're not special, but you're effing lucky. Enjoy your amazing life. You'll never exist again. It's so true, right? Like, you get so caught up with the day-to-day little things, and you're thinking, wow, I am alive. How many living creatures in the entire universe can think like we can feel and talk and express ourselves like we can? I'm going to guess not very many.
Not many, yeah. We're so lucky. And then this made me then think about, how do we choose joy? It makes it sound so easy, just to choose to be joyful. And it made me think about a book that I've read by a famous yogi named Osho. So there's this book that I've read personally called The Path of Yoga, where he discusses with his students how to use your mind to have a mindful and full life. And he actually talks about pain and how it's important to recognize the pain to allow it to pass. So I think that's an important way for people who get stuck in despair, is to recognize it and then get past it. So in the book, he uses the example of a headache. If you resist the headache, then that causes more pain and more despair. But if you acknowledge it, and you acknowledge this is a moment in my life and it will pass, then you can reach an ultimate happiness.
The choose part's really important. You're just talking about choose. Having studied philosophy and keeping my eyes open on articles and psychology and whatnot, there are people who will present theories that we don't actually have choice, that ultimately there's enough proof to show that everything that we do is behavioralism based on either nature or nurture. And what's my answer to that? My answer to that is, well, if that's the case, it doesn't really matter what we think, because I'm going to do all the same stuff. I choose to believe that I have a choice. So that's one aspect of choose, that first of all, you have to say to yourself, I can choose. And then the next part is in this joy versus despair thing. So I find myself lately, especially in the last 4, 5, 6 years, I find myself lamenting, or more realistically, whining and saying things like, I think I lived through the best times in human history some decades ago. We were breaking down walls, we were working together, living in harmony. And now it's a terrible thing to see everything that's happening in the world around me. And it's easy to just feel the pain as you said it, but not get past it. So I do need people to remind me like this, that there is a choice. So I have a choice, but I need to make the choice. And that can be really hard at times. It can be really hard to choose joy in these circumstances. If it is hard to make that choice, I don't know, Elise, do you have any tricks that you use or what do you do? Just consciously say to yourself, hey, I'm down in the dumps. I've got to choose a different approach?
I think sometimes when I'm feeling down in the dumps, I just recognize, this is a hard time. It's going to pass. And I use something like breathing a lot to get through those times. I know I've discussed that in the past before, where I just take some time, give myself a few breaths, and then I say, I'm just going to get through the next step. I think when I'm going through a hard time, the best thing I can do for myself is to chunk out my days. So sometimes if I go into a day feeling like I'm really down, I don't know if I can get through this day, I chunk out the tasks that I have to do that day and I just get through one at a time. And every time I get through a task, I feel successful and it just helps to make me feel better throughout the day. And then I find that I change my tune. I turn it around.
For me, I do like to check in. And so where I used to kind of fall into this pessimism and it was natural to feel sad and despondent, that still happens to me, but I'm better at checking in with myself. I'm better at introspecting and noticing when things are off. And when I do, lately, for some reason, I've been reading more about the Stoics and kind of their approach. And one really important part of their approach is that we can't control the things that we confront. We can't control what's happening around us. However, we can control how we react to that. Luckily for me, just by checking in and reminding myself of that, then I can say, okay, I'm focusing on pessimism. Is there some way to focus on optimism? And that kind of takes us to the other half of this equation, which is how amazing nature is. It's really easy, if you force yourself, to just look out the window or go for a walk or go to the water's edge or do whatever and just look around and be filled with the wonder that nature provides us.
And then the ability to have those extra feelings that we may have. You could think about people or experiences or memories that you have, and how lucky are we to be able to have that kind of intellectual thought.
If I do remember that, and then I'm like, hey, you know what? I want to make time to go find my run in the path instead of on the streets tomorrow. I want to find time to enjoy nature. And even a small thing too. I started eating healthier a while ago. Until then, I never really appreciated herbs and spices, right? So now when we're cooking, we almost always add things like thyme or rosemary or oregano or whatever. And it tastes so good, the food. And you're like, this is nature, right? So here we have all these scientists trying to make food that tastes like this or that. And you should buy this. It tastes exactly like, but meanwhile, nature is out there presenting us with the most incredible flavors and aromas.
There are so many people my age, so millennials, who like to garden. And I think it's so funny because you just love, it's so exciting to grow a cucumber.
Right.
And you're like, this is just in the earth. This is amazing. And it's just so exciting to celebrate those little things.
And yeah, like you bring it inside and you make food. You're like, this grew in my garden and I can make food with it. Yeah.
It's so easy for us to dismiss those things because we live in a world where we're so disconnected from it, from how amazing the earth is.
It's a great quote. And I love the fact that it's about choosing optimism, choosing joy. And it just makes me feel so good when I start thinking about nature and what an amazing thing it is. And by the way, it also makes me want to protect it. Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of artistic wellness. Many of us enjoy taking photos, and many of us carry a decent camera around with us all the time, our mobile phones. A much smaller group is trained in photography. They learn how to use lighting, settings, and more. They have an eye for the right spot to shoot from, or the right light, or the right color, and they're artists. And today I get to speak with one, Mike Farkas. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. So Mike Farkas is the owner and lead photographer for G3 Designs Photo Video. With 15 years in business, Mike is a driven and dedicated photographer that truly looks for the beauty in the details. And I know that from experience because, Mike, you did my son's wedding last year, and you and your G3 Designs photography team took amazing photos, including what's now one of my favorite photos of me and my kids.
It was an amazing time.
Thanks for that. So, Mike, what started your love of photography? What got you interested in the first place?
Well, before photography, I built houses as a carpenter, and, it was a good career. I enjoyed what I did. And then one day I bought a camera and I thought, hey, I enjoy, automotive photos, band photos. So I took a camera out. I started going to, live event shows or car shows and stuff and just started snapping pictures out of a hobby. I fell in love with the hobby and I would just start frequenting these type of shows and things more often. And people started saying, hey, well, you got an eye for this, would you mind maybe taking a picture for me or just a headshot or kind of a fun shot? Bands asked me for photos and stuff like that. So it just kind of snowballed out of control. And 15 years later, here I am still going.
There's some people, they just have that eye. I think there's a little bit of that innate talent inside some people. I guess you must have then at that point, you must have started to learn a little bit more on the technical side.
I believe a lot of it does come from just, viewing the world. You driving your car outside and you see a beautiful sunset and it catches your eye and you're like, hey, you know what? That's gorgeous. And then after time, I think over the 15 years is that I've developed more of that and I've enjoyed it more. So I find that I look at things different. I look at life different. I see the little details and things and I'm like, oh, that's kind of pretty. Or I see, maybe how a bird flew across a scene outside and just little things, how a flower just stands out of a bush and it just it resonates. And then all you got to do is snap it and capture that moment.
Did you find that you were noticing those things more after you started taking photographs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, over the years, it's developed more and more. So I'll notice things and how colors go together or how shapes go together. And I do bring it back to the carpenter days where, if you're looking at a house and things are straight and aligned and everything looks proper, it fits well. It looks good to your eye. And over the years, same with photography, it goes together well. Things blend together well, and it just starts to fit.
So at what point did you start finding it kind of a labor of love and thought to yourself, I wonder if I can do this more often and even for a living?
It started to snowball, so I started falling in love with it. And then more and more people just started asking. I would put my work and my photos online, social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatsoever. And people just started asking more. Hey, would you do some for me? Would you do some for me? At that point, I monetized it. And I said, okay, maybe I could start a little business here on the side. And I still was in the construction field. So I'm like, okay, a little something on the side. It just became so passionate. I enjoyed it so much that I decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I went full force at it. I started working 80 hours a week, dedicated my whole life to it, and it took off, and it came down to just hard work and determination, and it took off.
I can imagine different ways of expressing in art, and I'm sure every artist is different. So let me give you a couple different examples I can imagine. One is that you're trying to express yourself in your photographs in some way. Another is it's more that you're capturing what you see. So you're letting the outside kind of lead you. Do you have a sense of either of those in what you do when you're taking photographs?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I have always been attracted to something a little bit more darker, a little bit badass, with interesting badass lighting and a little bit on the edgier side sometimes. But when doing a job, there's also getting the job done. In a wedding, for example, you have to get the whole day. But there's no reason I can't put a little bit of my spice throughout the day, So, if it's just a nice picture of the shoes or the dress hanging up or something like that, there's some shots that you get the job done to make sure that it's almost documentation. And then maybe I'll do it again with a little bit of my flair and a little bit of my spice on it so that I've accomplished the job for the client and documented the day well. But then also let some of my artistic happiness come out. It's something I love to do, especially with the groomsmen or something. And you saw that with the boys.
Yeah.
That, we try to have a little fun with it. We still got great shots of you guys, but then we put a little spice on it and made it fun. And also it brought out a lot of fun experience, right?
I like the way you describe that, because then what I'm hearing is that kind of that spiciness, a little the darkness, that's you expressing yourself in the photographs, but also you're taking in what's in front of you, which is, gelling it with the scenes. And yeah, you're right. So there's the picture you mentioned, the boys, which is one of my favorites with my two sons. You saw this kind of look and you used some lighting and there was some darkness in the background and then lit kind of in the middle. And we were all sitting as if we were kind of almost like a gangster's look from the 30s. And it's just an amazing picture. And I can see that kind of slight bit of darkness, that little edge. It was amazing. So that's interesting that you get both going on. When you are on a project, do you show up early and kind of pre-plan where you're going to take the photographs? Do you let it hit you as you walk through the shoot? How does that work?
It's funny because in all the YouTube videos and stuff, when I was learning, everybody says, go check it out first. Go check it out first. What I prefer to do is to be thrown into the situation without pre-planning, without seeing it.
Okay.
Because maybe the light is coming different that day, or maybe there's shadows, or maybe the situation is different. Because if you showed up in the morning, the light may be one way. If you showed up in the evening, the light's coming from the other way. So I like to just come in and analyze the situation as it is in that moment. If the colors are coming this way, okay, so I'm going to start, look at the boys. This is what you're wearing. Add the background. So then I start putting the pieces together, having my subject, the background. Now, how's the lighting going to be? So I start this little process of one piece at a time. Here's my boys. Say there's 4 guys in the scene. Okay, this is the background I like. Nice blue, maybe a little fireplace. And then how am I going to light it from there? So that's kind of the process. But I've always enjoyed being thrown into a situation and figuring it out on site.
This is a bit of an unfair question. It's not really fair to ask people how they feel, but so now you're in that situation and you're walking through and you're trying to decide what photographs to take and you're taking the photographs. How does it make you feel? Like, for example, do you feel like you're in a zone or do you feel like you're being very technical?
I would say it's a mood, It's when, you see the kind of vision in your head, and 95% of the time, the photo comes to me in my head first. I see it, and then it's just executing what I saw in my head. So it's there, and I'm like, oh, there it is. That's how it's going to go. Boom, right away. Then I, since I do know my technical side, I know how to achieve what I just envisioned. It's exciting. It's extremely exciting when you see that vision in your head, make it come to reality, and then turn the camera around to the client or the subject, and then they get to see it. So you just brought something from your imagination, put it into a camera, turned around, and the reactions I get from everybody is oh, wow, I look cool, or that's pretty awesome, that looks neat, and that kind of energy feeds me.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's so nice now. In the olden days, you'd have to wait for the photographs to get developed. Now, boom, you can see them, you can delete the ones you don't like, and watch the smiles on the one people do like. Just for some context, one of our themes on our show is the importance of the arts to life and wellness. And a lot of times when people talk about wellness, they don't talk about art. And that's something we're trying to emphasize. And when I think back on a lot of important experiences I've had, they really come to life with photos. And there's lots of situations, actually, like there's family photos from decades ago. And over time, I've looked at that photo over and over. So now when I think back at that event, it's often the photo that I remember, and that helps me remember the whole event. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, to me, photography is a really important part of my own family and wellness. Do you hear that from other people as well?
I absolutely believe that to be true. It's different than, crunching numbers or something. This is creating something that's timeless, especially when it comes to family or loved ones and things like that. You look back, like you said, you see your family and friends, and it could bring you back. It could bring you back to a feeling, an emotion, and good times. Hopefully they are good times. Yes, but it can bring you back, and it's so powerful. in just a simple photograph. Oh, maybe it was a picture of you and your family at the beach. You kind of remember the sights, the smell, the way it made you feel just by a simple photograph. So artistic part of it is a beautiful thing. We get to create something that's truly beautiful, especially being in the wedding industry. It's timeless. 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, they're together. That's a beautiful thing. They can look back and be like, wow, I look so young and this thing, and have those memories all flood back.
The other part of that I've realized now, and in part because of the great photos you took at Jeremy's wedding, when you not only have the photos, when you not only have that visual record, but when it's artistic, when there's something extra to it, it makes the occasion even more special, and you're remembering it in a more special way. So I really appreciate that.
I'm pretty simple, I'm an easy guy. And it comes down to, I truly love what I do. I'm happy in what I do. I was happy as a carpenter, but this fulfills me. And like any other job, it has its easier days and it has its harder days. But when I have someone like your son call me back and say, hey, Mike, it blew me away. It made me so happy. My wife and I are so happy that we have these, and they only increase in value as their marriage goes into the future. It's beautiful that they could have something, and it makes me feel great as an artist that it was cool. It was fun. And that's how you and I connected. It was neat. It was different. It wasn't just taking a picture. It's that artistic vision that inspired this conversation today.
You talk about priceless, and I think you're right. Just a quick experience before I turn to my last question. I went on a family vacation once, and I took a whole bunch of pictures, and there was one in particular that I took that I just loved. And unfortunately, I took the disc out and I lost it. And so I don't have those pictures. And I've forever been disappointed in losing those. And I feel like it was something priceless that I lost. So yes, you're right. The ones that we have, especially the ones that have that added zing, they are priceless. Here's the question we ask every guest. We are a show about wellness, and we explore different categories of wellness. And we know that no one can keep all of their categories of wellness going at any given time, so we do a little mini wellness check-in. So, Mike, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Great question. As we discussed earlier off mic, it was, yes, there has been times, and being in business like this, it can be upwards of, 70, 80 hours a week. So for a long time, I did neglect my health. And as we discussed, I've quit smoking now, trying to make better choices in my life with my diet, treating my body better with good exercise and good healthy practices so that I can bring my arts up another level. And, I have a daughter as well, so that's very important to me. So, it's been a lot of changes over the years as I grew in this business, and I grew as an artist and as a man. And I'm making better changes to my health physically so that I could do better externally.
That sounds amazing. And just a quick kind of segue. It's not unusual for, that was my story. I made some changes. It sounds like you're making changes. And the quick segue point is, I wish I knew kind of this stuff when I was in my 20s and 30s, not now.
Yes.
And so just, if there's anybody out there listening in your 20s and 30s, Mike and I will both tell you that we wish we had focused on healthy eating, healthy lifestyle right from the start, so we wouldn't have to catch up. But in the meantime, Mike, it's fantastic that you made the change, and we wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. Last week, during our unseasonably warm springtime temperatures, which were bizarre in mid-February, I had a gig scheduled for the Thursday night, and I was looking forward to it, because it was my first time playing at this particular venue. It's another one of the Heart and Crown places. There are 3 of them up here, and I've frequented the other ones, both as a patron and as a musician, several times. But this one, in Little Italy, It was my debut, so I was looking forward to getting to know the folks there and getting a feel for the room and all that stuff. As I was finishing my last lesson, unbeknownst to me, because I was in a basement with no windows, the snow came back. And so when I left the lesson, it was like being transported into a winter wonderland like that. It just all came down at once. So the roads were bad. The drive home was a little bit white-knuckly and nerve-wracking, but we made it. Loaded everything into the car, and what should have been about a 10-minute drive was more like a 30-ish minute drive to get over to the venue. But we made it with some time to spare, introduced myself to the managers and whatnot, and began setting up. And because of the weather, I thought, it's probably going to be kind of quiet tonight. But all things considered, I'm okay with that. It's a new room, new friends, new staff. It's almost like a trial run, So I was feeling all right about it. And one of my students and her husband came out for my first set, so that was nice. Anyway, played through the first set, said hello, met some new folks. I jump into my second set, and a Guinness finds its way over from the bar. And it turns out that someone at the bar had purchased one for me, and just let the record show, as a performing musician, we like when that happens. So I thanked them after the song and, gave them a wave and a cheers and set the beverage on the table behind me, where I had some water as well, right in the middle of the table. Like, okay, that's an important note. So I go back to playing, and a couple songs later, this big, loud group of guys walks in, university age. It looks like maybe they had just played in a game, or their team had won a game or something. There was lots of sports paraphernalia and sports talk and volume. And so to compensate for this sudden shift in energy in the room, which was welcome, by the way, I had to turn up my volume a bit, which is fine. Let's get the party going. Let's keep it rolling. So I turn up a little bit and continue playing. And I start playing some more upbeat, energetic tunes as well, because the room has become a little more alive. And, it's going fine. Things are going well. And I'm nearing the end of my second set, and I hear this from behind me. Now, important to note, I'm the only one who's been on the stage the entire night except to bring over the Guinness, which I placed on the table. There are railings along the side, so no one can just, climb up there behind me. And no one has been up there. So I'm thinking to myself, what the heck? What? So I turn and look over my shoulder, and sure enough, my Guinness has migrated from the table to the floor and decided to shatter into a trillion pieces and spill everywhere. So I finish the song and kind of sort of quickly hustle my cables out of the liquid, and I say into the mic, so sorry, there's been a spill over here. I'm happy to clean it up if you can bring me the stuff, right? And so the bartender comes over, and she starts cleaning it. I felt so bad, but she wouldn't let me do it, I imagine, because broken glass and liability, but honestly, I would have. I kept offering to clean it. So I felt so bad because, it was nobody's fault, really. Turns out what had happened was when I turned up my volume, the bass, the low frequencies, had vibrated. And the way that room is designed, the stage is right in the corner. So it acts as a bass trap. In a nutshell, what happened was it was like a hot spot for bass frequencies back there. And my glass, T-Rex scene from Jurassic Park, the vibrations, right, when it takes a step. It was like that, but amped up a bazillion times and constant. So it just kind of danced right off the table. But that's a matter of a few feet. 2.5 feet probably it moved. So it kind of blew my mind, to be honest. The power of sound. Apparently, Guinness is not immune. Anyway, to the staff at the Heart, thanks for working with me through that. And I'll see you again soon. And to that rowdy squad of dudes that came in halfway through, hope your celebration continues, and go team. That's all for me this week. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We're glad you're here, and we hope you're making wellness a priority. Hope you're getting something out of the podcast. And especially for people who are new, you might not know that the podcast was inspired by my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster. It's available on Amazon, Indigo, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere where you can buy books online. And this is my pitch for you to buy a copy and have a read. I think it'll enhance the experience of the podcast, and it will also help us defray some costs because it's really expensive putting out a podcast. So grab a copy if you can, and in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
Hi, everyone. It's Julie Wilson, and I'm here with Elise Seifert. And hello. So today we've got another interesting article, although you may have heard us talk about it in the past, and it's 40 fun ways to exercise without realizing it. And I must say, from the last time we were talking about this, there are definitely ways of exercising without realizing it. Elise, I'm going to flip it back to you. Tell us one of the fun ways that you like to exercise or that you would like to try from this list.
There's one exercise that I know I've tried doing before. It's trying handstands or headstands. So I know when I was really into yoga for a while in university, and they would always encourage us to try doing headstands in our yoga class, at least the one that I typically attended. And it was such a challenge. So I would take it upon myself at home to do headstands against the wall. And I gave myself kind of a summer challenge to try to do it every day until I felt comfortable enough to attempt it in the class or without the wall. And I have to say, it leaves me sweating. It's so much core strength that's required. And it was something that I would do just while I was watching TV. It allowed me to do movement in a time where I typically wouldn't be moving. So I think it was a great way to incorporate some movement into my everyday and increase my NEAT.
Wow, that is impressive. I cannot do a handstand or a headstand if my life depended on it. It's hard. They're very, very hard work. I just even know from my gym doing wall climbs, just even those and it takes a lot on your shoulders, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of pressure there. So good for you.
I always would lean towards the headstand just to take the pressure off the shoulders there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still a great challenge and it requires so much core strength.
We can all use a bit more of the core strength, right?
That's right. And how about you, Julie? What popped out to you in this article?
I'm sort of on a child theme here. The last couple of times that we chatted, I talked about my kids. So one that stood out for me was play a childhood game. And I'm not talking Monopoly or Clue or any of those games. I'm talking about tag or capture the flag. Those games. I don't know about you, but with my kids when they were little, I was always the one that was it. So I was always the one running here and there, and they're so much faster than me. Talk about a good workout, and you're having fun with your kids doing it at the same time, which I think is really important, right?
It's so important. It means so much to them to be able to have those experiences.
Exactly.
I know in my classroom with my students, I teach kindergarten, and they always love for me to be the lava monster or the zombie or it in whatever way. And I'm always like, who's sweating? It's a lot of work. And I'm the kind of teacher who loves to play gym games with my kids too. And it's just so much fun. Today we played a game called Ball Over the Wall where we make a wall of mats in the middle of the gym.
Yeah.
And everyone starts with the same amount of balls. And when the music starts, you just throw the balls over the wall. And then when the music stops, you collect all the balls on your side, and whichever side has the least amount is the winner.
That is cool. And that's a lot of fun.
Just so much fun because it's the kind of game where everyone's involved and everyone's trying and you're just throwing the balls as hard as you can. You're running to get those balls. And I was so hot at the end of it. I was just working out.
A reward without actually thinking the word exercise, right?
Yeah, so much fun.
It's awesome. Awesome. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about some of these fun ways to exercise, the article again is called 40 Ways to Exercise Without Realizing It. And it's written by Steve Cam. And it was last updated October 18th, 2023.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. Most of the time I just keep running and it all just passes by. The unbelievable fancy cars with all their electronics, buildings and new things, the lights everywhere. the technology that's everywhere, shiny new light rail transit cars on the tracks they built a little while ago, all the time listening to music, playing from wireless headphones on my mobile phone. It's basically a computer more advanced than ones I used to have. Usually it all just kind of passes by. Anyway, I used my mobile phone. I stopped to switch from an audiobook to music for the end of my run, and I was on a hill and I kind of got a sight of the city. And I didn't think anything of it, and then I just stopped, and for some reason I thought to myself, whoa, I wonder if somebody from 300, 400, 2,000 years ago came and stood beside me and looked out at the same sight. The wonder that they would have in their eyes, the questions, the thought about how miraculous everything is. It made me look at things in a different way. And I put my music on and took off on my run, but felt a bit different. Oh, sorry, it's me.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Flipside with Stephen and Elise. Stephen, today I was wondering, what are some marriage tips that people might have given to you when we first got married?
Okay, so let me think about this. Off the top of my head, I know that I've heard things like, don't go to bed angry.
Definitely.
Happy wife, happy life is another one that I've heard.
If it rhymes, it must work.
And the other one, which kind of goes along with that, with arguments, the 3 words that you always say at the end of the argument is either you were right or I am sorry.
Always works. I think those are great tips. But have you ever heard of the Scandinavian sleep method and how beneficial it might be to marriages?
I don't think so, no.
No, which is really interesting because this is actually something that we do. And I didn't really know that it officially had a name.
Okay,
or
I'm curious.
Other people did this. So Scandinavian sleep method is when couples sleep in the same bed, but they use separate blankets.
Oh, yes, that is true.
Yeah, and it's just not something I had ever heard of people doing. They say that it helps to lessen sleep disruption. Partners can still share a bed, but they don't have to share the single duvet or single comforter. And you can personalize your sleep to your individual preferences without disturbing the other.
Yeah, so I'm guilty here that I'm just a bit of a turner and a puller in bed. And when we have the same comforter, I don't sleep as well because I wake up worrying that I'm taking your blanket.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, so I don't even think that I really thought much about having 2 blankets and that would be a different thing than what most people do, or even that it had an official name.
Right? I know. It was so surprising. I know it's something we kind of naturally did because we're really not good at sharing blankets.
We're just not good at sharing blankets. We're good at sharing a lot of things, but not blankets.
No, and it allows us to really not worry about our sleep and not worry about taking each other's blanket. It also means I know I'm kind of particular about having my feet out or my shoulder out at certain times, and then you don't have to worry about disrupting the other person when you do that. Yeah,
because I like to fall asleep with my shoulders out, but then when I'm sleeping, I'm completely covered.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where it is I pull and roll. That's what I do. I'm
you pull and you roll.
Yeah.
And it actually has come to the point where when we go places, we now bring an extra blanket.
We bring an extra blanket.
Because we know we sleep so much better if we each have our own blanket.
Yeah.
So when we're at a hotel, let's say, we know that we can't use the same.
No, so we either have to ask for an extra blanket or just plan ahead and bring one.
And it works so well for us to have a long, restful sleep.
Yeah, so if you find yourself having issues with your significant other, that might be something that you could try. The Scandinavian sleep method, is that what you said it's called?
That's what it's called.
Yeah, apparently try that.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with Elise and John.
Hello.
Hey.
Happy Easter, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend. It was an incredibly busy week for me, especially because the grocery stores were closed on Fridays and Sunday for us here in Ontario, which makes it really hard when you're doing family celebrations to try and get that all organized and done in time. I also did quite a few catering gigs this weekend, which was surprising. There was an 80s concert, so music all from the 80s, and actually people who celebrated music in the 80s were there. So that was kind of a flashback. And I also did a celebration of life on Saturday, which was really great. So did a lot of work, had a lot of family time, spent Easter with our kids as well as some of family, and it was great. What about you, John?
We did our last dance lesson, which was a kind of like a dance party.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Most of the people dressed up, and it was really cool. I ended up just putting my GoPro on and just setting it on a table and recording the whole class so that we could get a couple things for us. What we really liked, we didn't really watch too much, we've been so busy, but what we really liked about it is the whole class looked awesome. Like everybody did great, and it was a really good feeling, so that was good. And I was home when Sheila was working, and she got hit on. No, should I leave that in? So she came home and was telling me about how some guy was trying to bring her home, and I'm like, well, he probably
man, it's been a while since that happened.
Someone with good taste, but luckily Sheila came home to me, so that was good. I've been falling behind on, like, the shows are there. I've had the recordings ready, but I've been falling behind on editing. So it's been several weeks on, let's call it, just on time productions.
Yes.
Of getting the podcast out. So that's good. And I haven't felt anything in my back for a few days, so I think I can go back to a regular physical exercise routine. And of course, now I'm scared, right? So like before my back was hurt, I kept saying, oh, I'm loving this weight. I just love it so much. I can't work. Now I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. So I got to get the motivation and get going. How about you, Elise?
Well, it's been a lovely week. I think the highlight for me is Easter weekend. Having 4 days off, a nice long weekend. We were able to come down to Kitchener to visit you both and the rest of the family. We got to spend some quality time with family, which was really great. And then looking forward to this week, just hoping to get outside a little bit more.
It sounds like you have a teeny bit of your cough still.
It's a lingering one. I think it's been going around my classroom and it just lingers for weeks. So
bummer.
Hopefully some fresh air fixes it.
Well, hopefully you do get outside, maybe walk to work and get some fresh air.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week, and we hope that you join us again soon.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.